Good morning. Good morning. The program this morning is going to be, you're all here, we have a nice turnout, full room because there's so many people that are going to be interested in what we're talking about. But we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if I can have Jeanette Lombardo lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the back of the room there.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jeanette, I want you to know you did a fabulous job. If you come up here for a second, I want to present you with a very special presentation. I can't talk about it. Just bear with us for a moment while Jeanette works her way up. I want to tell you what a fabulous job you did in leading us in that Pledge of Allegiance. And as a reward for you, and I don't do this for everybody, you don't have to come all the way. Thank you. Unless you want to. But as a special reward for you, I want to give you back your checkbook that I happened to find in the men's room. I don't know what's going on in here. That's where I found it, and we'll just leave it at that. We'll go any further. We have a very special moderator today that's going to help us with the three speakers that we have. Susan Miller is very much. All the way from New York, Ryan Williams is going to be here today. To help us out and run the program. Just in case he can't make it, he will admit to the fact that he was here anyways. So we have to introduce a couple of people here. And representing the city of Camarillo is Charlotte Craven. Where is Charlotte? Nice to have you here. A couple of NWA directors is, and you don't have a question. Well, where is Jim? Oh, there you are, Jim Hensley, who is elected member.
I'm back. Thank you, sir.
You're what?
I'm back.
Back again.
After 4 years.
After a 4-year hiatus, welcome back. Let's see. With Camarosa Water District, we have Al Fox here today. It's working. All right, maybe this one's better.
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Or is it worse? Thank you, Al. Let's see. We talked about Al. Meridian Consultants, Joe Gibson's here, and Tom Slauson with Cayugas Municipal Water District. So, a couple of announcements before we get into our guest speakers. Let's see. Thursday, April 16th is the 23rd Annual Water Symposium. Is there an app for that? New tools for new times. That's at the courtyard where we always meet up for a water rice breakfast. Sponsorships are still very much available for those people out there in companies that haven't sent their checks in and made their sponsor money available. It is very much available for you to do that. It's never too late. So please show up for that and send money. The other one is the Channel Counties is having their educational luncheon program. Sodium hydrochloride applications and precautions. Sounds very exciting. I know that a lot of you will be there. And let's see, program chair Brian Collins. So that is on Wednesday, February 25th. So we all should be there too. Kelly, I don't have a list of who's going to be up here. So are you doing live? Is there any that kind of stuff that you need to what now?
Stacy, to my right, we have Gene West. He's a member of our, as a matter of fact, he's the chair of our board. He's also new elected to GMA, still on GMA board.
I understand you're an attorney, is that correct?
Correct.
Well, listen, friends. So I want to tell you a little story. I want to tell you a little story about a little Jewish man that was leaving a convenience store one day and had a cup of coffee in his hand and he just gotten. And he noticed a funeral procession that was passing by the store. So what he saw, as you do in a funeral procession, was a black hearse carrying a body, I imagine. And then about 50 feet behind that was a second black hearse. And then behind that, there was a line of about 200 men behind the second black hearse. So he didn't get what was going on. And then lo and behold, somebody comes up, has a dog on a leash, and puts the dog that's on the leash right in front of the 200 guys that were behind hearse number 2. So he said, you know, I've never seen a funeral like that. And he had to go up to the mourning person, not like good, mourning. So I believe it was an attorney, and that's how it works. And he said, listen, he says, you know, I've never seen a funeral quite like this before. Can you tell me what's going on and who's in the front hearse? He said, that's my wife. I said, that's my wife? He said, I can't believe that's your wife. He says, well, what happened? He said, well, you see the dog back there? He said, my wife was yelling at me, very similar to my household. And the dog attacked her and killed her. Oh, God, can you even believe that? And then there was a second hearse behind me, as I told you. He said, well, who's in that? He said, well, and that one back there is my mother-in-law. And he goes, your mother-in-law? I can't believe that. What happened? He says, well, she came over after my wife was killed and gave me help. And my dog killed her too. He says, well, you know, that's really quite interesting. He said, is there any way that I can borrow your dog? And the lawyer replied to him, get in line. I have a backup story to tell you, but since that one went over okay, I'll save the backup for next month. Which Keith Moore sent me, so he's not here, so I'll save it for next month in Oxford. All right, so before we get going, any announcements anybody has to make about anything coming up or whatever? All right, so let's bring up our guest speakers, which we have today. I'm going to call it Susan Mulligan, and then Susan, I'm going to have you come to the introduction. I don't have your checkbook, but I know.
We don't want to talk about it.
Let's go. So, come up here. You know, it's love. I can't look on it, but I can sure not. There's a hard issue for you.
Yeah, works great. Okay. So, if you don't know, I'm Susan Mulligan, General Manager of Cayugas Municipal Water District, and I'd like to invite the other two speakers up here to have a seat. Brian Bondi, who's Groundwater Manager for Cayugas, and has been working on these Las Cosas issues for quite some time, and Carol Schoen, who's General Manager for Zone, Mutual Water Company, and Berwood Mutual Water Company, which are both agricultural agencies in the Las Cosas area, and between the two of them, they take up a large portion of the Las Cosas basin. So we'll get started. So what we're going to talk about today is salinity problems. I'm going to talk about salinity problems in general, give an update on the salinity management pipeline that Cayugas is building for some time now. Brian's going to talk about this particular study about salinity management options for the agricultural folks in the Las Cosas Basin. And I would like to say there is a municipal desalter being proposed by Metro County Water Works District that we're not going to talk about much today, and I'm sure that they will be happy to come back and talk about this. Goals and objectives. One thing that we looked at was whether we could use existing infrastructure to move water around in the basin. So Brian's going to talk about mapping all of that existing agricultural water infrastructure. What supplies are impacted by high chlorides, what do we expect over the next decade or so. and the evaluation of alternatives and what we thought might work and what ended up being the solution was a little bit of a surprise to us. And then what next? And Carol's going to talk about zone from mutual water companies' perspective. They are the ones farthest ahead at looking at building a desalter, and she'll talk about a little bit of their history and their issues and why they're looking at that. So let's talk, I'm going to start big picture, salinity problems in general. In arid areas, when you bring in water from somewhere else for irrigation, there's always going to be salt buildup. And what happens is, and this is true all over the world, every place, you bring in imported supplies. There's some naturally occurring salts in the groundwater basins. And water goes into the basin from creeks, from people irrigating at their homes, from wastewater plants. And what happens is it gets saltier each time it's reused. People will pump out of the basin, and then that's a little bit saltier, and they reapply, and the salts get applied, and the salts just build up over time in the basins. We have an extra special case here because we have a lot of marine sediments in our county, so there's some naturally occurring salt at a little higher level than some other areas. So although our state water project water that we get in is relatively low in salt, as it gets reused and as we keep irrigating over time, the salts are building up in our area. So just a lesson from history. Babylon didn't fall as a result of low water use or all kinds of other things that make civilizations fall. It fell because of salt. The Fertile Crescent, which includes Iraq, and you've seen that on television, it's not exactly an agricultural heaven. That whole area, Egypt over Mesopotamia, used to be a great agricultural region, and civilization thrived, and everything was great, and we irrigated, and eventually everything salted up. And it's salted to this day. And that's a lesson that we want to learn from, and not have somebody talking about the fall of Ventura County someday because of salts. And they won't, because we've got solutions to the process. So the problems in our area in general with salts, as I think most of you know, those are the basins. The red ones are the ones with the most salt, orange a little bit less, the yellow a little bit less, but they're all higher than would be best for agriculture, at least many of the agricultural purposes. So right now, some groundwater and recycled water in our area isn't suitable for irrigation. The salinity is too high. There may be a few crops that can be grown, but berries and avocados and citrus have different salinity. Dischargers, the wastewater plants in our area, especially when they're using groundwater as some of the source that goes into people's homes and then ends up in the wastewater, they're violating regulatory limits as they discharge into creeks. That's a problem. And then some local groundwater supplies aren't being used due to salts. There's quite a bit of groundwater in Silicon Valley, Thousand Oaks. There's some in Camarillo, Moore Park. They're all too salty to be used, and they're just, in Thousand Oaks and Simi, they're actually nuisance water and have to be pumped out because they would flood homes and vaults and things like that. So we definitely have salinity problems in our area today. Another thing is, everybody's looking at stormwater recharge as a new water source. Well, if your groundwater basins are full, stormwater can't go into the basins. They're already full with salty water. The stormwater is wonderful, low salt water. But before we can do much stormwater recharge, we're going to need to remove some of that salty groundwater. So let's talk a little bit about the salinity management pipeline. KITES has been working on this for over a decade, and there's quite a bit that's done. The parts that are done are an outfall in the Port Hueneme area, pipe all the way across the Oxnard Plain, and pipe in North Camarillo. These two reaches of pipe across the 101, that reach is in construction right now. And the reach between Camarillo and Somas were just called for bids on that project last night. And then there's some future reaches. One news update is that last fall, our our board made the decision we had originally planned to go straight from Moore Park to Simi Valley with the pipe, but there are some salinity issues in the Santa Rosa Basin and also in the Conejo Valley area. And if the pipe comes up Santa Rosa Valley to get to Simi Valley, that opens up a lot of options for the folks in the Santa Rosa Valley and for the folks in Conejo Valley. So that decision has been made, and that's the proposed alignment. Generally, we haven't defined it. So what the pipe does is it increases water reliability, because we're developing local resources. As you all know, the State Water Project has its problems with reliability. And it increases reliability by letting the brackish groundwater be used rather than just sitting there unused or as a nuisance. And it also reduces the salinity of local supplies, because what it does is all the salts that's building up in the watershed is going to get removed, and it's already started a little bit, to get removed and moved out to the ocean where it isn't doing any harm, so that we don't end up like this ocean. So what's being discharged to the salinity management pipeline? It's brine from treatment of groundwater, these brackish desalters, and it's also tertiary treated wastewater. Nobody's actually discharged the tertiary treated wastewater yet, but we have a connection to Camrosa's plant. And the reason is they are doing everything they can to use recycled water whenever they can. So in the spring, summer, fall, there are lots of people who need the recycled water, but when it's raining, they don't have people who need the water. And if it's a particularly wet year, again, that hasn't happened yet lately, they might have too much excess water, and that wastewater is too salty to discharge to the creeks. So they need a place to put it, and they would put that into the salinity management pipeline. Oh, sorry. The first one was about brine from tertiary treated wastewater. That too we don't have yet, but there are some opportunities, especially as people start looking at potable reuse, direct or indirect potable reuse, where they are treating their wastewater discharges or their wastewater plant water with reverse osmosis, and gives them a place to put the brine. So who wants to build a desalter? Well, the municipal agencies want to build a desalter because it's cheaper than imported water at this point, and it diversifies their supplies and really improves their reliability. If we have an earthquake up in the Sacramento Delta and the state project water is coming down here, they have a desalter that helps them supplement their supplies in that situation. And Titus is very supportive of that. We want them to do that. Agriculture is looking at building desalters. It is more expensive than their current sources, their groundwater. But as the aquifers get more saline, they end up with limited choices. And if their other choice is buying imported water, these desalters look pretty good. It's also less expensive for agriculture to treat, because they don't have to get to the same quality standards that the municipal folks need to. And we'll get to some cost. Brian will get into some costs later. So I'm going to go through the facilities, and we have some flyover footage, so you can pretend that you're at California Adventure, flying over Adventure. So we have an outfall out in the Wenini area, and just to give you a sense, we'll fly over it, but it goes underneath the ground to get past the surf zone, about 2,300 feet. Then it lies on the ocean floor, and there is a 400-foot diffuser that extends further, and that's where the water comes out. That's the pipe. We actually made the pipe at Point Magoo, the Naval Base, and floated it over and pulled it into shore from the ocean. And on the right, you can see the diffusers. They're little 5-inch diameter pipes that come off of this desalter every 15 feet. And those are little rubber check valves where the water can go out but can't come in. And then we've been building pipe, that's 48-inch pipe on the Wenini Road, and then this pipe down to the right is 30-inch diameter pipe that was along Lewis Road in Camarillo. So now we're going to do bird's eye view of the pipe we've got the flyover. We're going to look at the Port Wenini brackish water plant, the Camarosa Round Mountain treatment plant and reclamation facility, Camarillo's plant, North Pleasant Valley desalter. There is a plan for Bell Ranch desalter. Those two have some challenges to work out. I don't have a site for that, but that is a possible project along the way. And then we will end at the Las Posas Agricultural Desalter. So there we have the cities. And the pipe, the blue is what's already in place and the green is in process. And off the far right is ending right in the Las Posas Valley. So we'll fly down to the Winnie outfall. This is a little less than a mile offshore. Off to the right is the fishing pier. About 5,000 feet long. That's the diffuser that I described earlier. That's what the little ports are on the diffuser. This is a video from last fall that we're required by the regional board to video and see the condition of the outfall every year. And a lot has grown on there. There's kelp growing on there. It's hard to see. You're going to see it, guys. And he's holding one of the little ports. The water's coming out. That kelp isn't causing a problem. So it's there. It's a habitat for kelp, and it's working. So now we're going to fly in. We're coming in. This is Surfside Drive in the city of Port Winnie. We're going to head over to the brackish water plant. There's going to be a line around where Port Winnie's brackish water plant is. Off to the right, you'll see Oxnard's advanced water purification facility. They are not discharging to Cayugas' outfall. They're discharging to their own outfall. So there with the orange is Port Winnie's brackish water facility. So that's Winnie Road and Perkins. So that facility's been in place since 1999. They have been discharging to Oxnard's wastewater plant, but they're making that more salty. So Oxnard would like to have them off of there, and they are now discharging to Cayugas' Salinity Management Pipeline. So they were really the first in the county that got into this desalter business. So we're going to head up Winnie Road. Off to the right, that big empty area is where the Oxnard's planning the Ormond Beach wetlands. We're going to head out of the city of Oxnard, across the J Street drain. And just head through some agricultural areas. United is looking at putting in some brackish wells out here. They would be off to the right of this facility, and they would potentially discharge to the Salinity Management Pipeline. And so we're just heading on. We're coming up on Highway 1. Every bit of this pipe was challenged. Remember most of it. He was building it. This is the Revlon Slough. Come underneath the Revlon Slough. And now we're coming over to Lewis Road. Here's Las Posas right here, Las Posas Road. The county let us put our pipe in the bridge that goes over to Potrero Road. And now we're coming over to Camarosa's facility. Just ahead, off to the left there by Old Lewis Road is where they have a well that feeds their brackish water facility. And that they put the brackish water treatment plant at their wastewater facility. This is just one well. The yield is 1,000 acre-feet per year. They've been operational since early last year and discharging to the Salinity Management Pipeline. What you're looking at here is the wastewater plant. There's the desalter, right, Terry? That is the desalter, correct? I'm sure Terry remembers every minute of this construction. So we're going to head on up, and we're going to go to Cayugas' control tank, which if you've been driving along down towards Cal State Channel Islands, you might have seen a tank going in. Not a huge tank, but it's a tank that's necessary to provide a little bit of water pressure across the Oxnard Plain to get water pushed out the outfall. So it's right by Coelty and Lewis Road. And this is where Camarillo's going to tie in. We'll fly over to Camarillo's wastewater plant in a second. There's the drone. You can see the shadow from the drone. So this is the plant. It's still in construction. We haven't got the side all cleaned up, but you can see the tank right there by Lewis Road. We tried to make it a color that would blend in pretty well. And then let's head over to the Camarillo wastewater treatment plant. This is a pipe that's partly built by Camarillo, and it will be a recycled water pipe that can serve the farms along here. But if they have extra water, just the same thing that I described, during the wintertime, that they can't discharge in the creek, they'll go ahead and discharge that to the salinity management pipeline. And here's their plant, flyover of their plant. I don't know if they knew that they were being spied on earlier this week. Pretty big plant. I had never seen this view of it. So they are making good quality recycled water that they are working to distribute. I think they're close, or maybe they have distributed to Village of the Park at this point. So here's their pipe back to the salinity management pipeline. Let's head upstream. So this part is under construction now. You will see this, they're in the very early phases, so you'll see this going in on the ag property. We're going to have a difficult crossing at Lewis and Pleasant Valley. We're going to tunnel underneath there, but there'll still be some traffic impacts. Headed up Dawson Drive. Going to go underneath the freeway, continue up Dawson Drive. I'm sorry, underneath Lewis Road. And then underneath the freeway here, going into the Ventura County Transportation Commission parking lot, past El Tecolodi, past Temple, and tie into the pipe. For those Camarillo folks, you know. This pipe is already in. This is in Lewis Road. And it terminates at a connection point where the North Pleasant Valley desalter could connect in. And so I don't think they know the exact location or pipe alignment, but generally this yellow line shows their proposed alignment. They have some wells off to the west here. There's the Camarillo Library. So again, I don't know this is the exact footprint, but this is the general idea. They would build a desalter somewhere in this area. And they're looking at a pretty big one, potentially operational in a couple of years, a fairly good yield, 7,500 acre-feet a year. Bell Ranch is also looking at something in this area. I didn't have a location, and didn't have so much detail on it. So this last reach, we're going to end in the Las Posas Basin. We're going up Somas Road. Off to the right, you can see the arroyo. Last little bit. So headed up along Somas Road, and then we're going to go by the railroad tracks. So Somas Road heads off to the left, and we're going to just keep going straight along the railroad tracks. About in this general area, you start getting into the Las Posas Basin. And 2 years from now, the pipe will be up to that location. So that desalter Carol's going to talk about, yield could be up to 3,000 acre-feet a year. She'll talk to you about that in more detail. So we talked about all those discharges, other future potential ones. United is looking at a brackish water project. Moore Park is looking at a desalter. Santa Rosa agricultural folks. Camarosa. Thousand Oaks is looking at desalters, and Simi Valley as well. So we've got some interesting stuff that's coming in the future that will all be moving the salts out of our watershed. Oh, and then potentially indirect will use of wastewater. Turn it over to Brian.
So we're going to switch gears here and start talking a little bit about the study that we did in the Las Posas Basin that we recently completed to investigate brackish water, groundwater desalination opportunities for ag entities. First, I'll give a little background, frame up the water quality issues, and then we'll get into the study. So here's a map of the Las Posas Basin, and just to keep you oriented, City of Moore Park is here, far right. Camarillo down here. Basically, the basin occupied the Las Posas Valley. Highway 118, LA Avenue running through Valley Lewis Road coming up to the Somas intersection. There's three subbasins that we frequently refer to in the Las Posas Basin. There's a west, an east, and a south. The important major feature in the basin is a geologic discontinuity that bisects the valley. The aquifers in this area, west, do not communicate to much degree with the aquifers in the east and south Las Cruces Basin. So these are sort of two independent but linked areas, linked in the sense that we have two major water systems whose pipes and facilities do cross over this boundary, so water does move back and forth between the subbasins on the surface, but not in the subsurface. One of those is Zone Mutual Water Company system, which you'll hear more about later. It's one of the water systems that spans that boundary. Down here on the south side of the basin, in the faint blue, is the Arroyo Las Posas. This is a creek that flows through the basin. It's an important feature in the basin. It does continue on up into the watershed, into the Simi Valley area, and much of the source of water that we see year-round in the creek does come from Simi Valley. What you're looking at in terms of the colors is the chloride concentration in the water, ranging up to 250 milligrams per liter in the darkest purple shade here. And there's been a long history of water quality issues in this part of the Las Posas Basin, particularly along the Arroyo Las Posas. As early as the early 1930s, there's documentation and reports by the state of poor quality water along the Arroyo and in the shallow aquifers. And this early water quality issues were related to the natural salinity in the marine soils that Susan mentioned earlier, as well as potentially some of the earlier agricultural activities in both the Las Posas Basin and the Simi Valley area. Beginning in the 1960s, this brackish water began showing up in the deeper, the main aquifer in the basin that most of the people come from. And over the last 50 years, we've seen this plume, if you will, or area of brackish water extend almost 2 miles north into the basin. And the major reason for this has to do with two main factors. One, beginning in the late 1960s, the effect of importing water into Ventura County was starting to be seen, particularly in Simi Valley. The result of this was two things. First, discharges from the Simi Valley Water Quality Control Plant to the Arroyo began to fill up the shallow aquifers in this area. Later in the 1980s, the city also had to start pumping shallow groundwater in the west end of Simi Valley to prevent nuisance effects related to the rising water. That water was also discharged and continues to be discharged to the Arroyo, and that water also helped fill this area up. So with the addition of that water, the shallow system built up the water level and pressure, which then caused the water to start moving down into the deeper aquifers, which I'll show in a cross-section view in a minute, will make a little more sense. At the same time, what was also happening was pumping in the first half of the last century had lowered the water levels in the deep main aquifers. And so you have these two conditions happening sort of simultaneously. Less pressure in the main aquifer, more pressure in the shallow. That created the conditions for this water to move down into the main part of the basin. And that's the conditions we have today. So if we were to take a cross-section view through this part of the basin here and looking south to north, this is generally, in a cartoon sense, what you would see. The main aquifer is the Fox Canyon aquifer. That's where 90% of the pumping in the basin comes from. Here's the Arroyo Las Posas on the south side of the basin, and the shallow aquifer that's associated with the floodplain deposits from the creek. This well here is just generally supposed to represent the majority of the pumping in the basin. The pumping in the basin is focused in sort of the middle part of the basin, so I'm showing the well sort of central here. And what that does is it creates a low head spot or pressure spot in the aquifer. So the water is flowing from both sides of the basin towards the middle of the basin. So you can see that here with recharge in the area where the aquifer is exposed on the hills, some leakage downward through the the overlying units, and we have flow towards the Millwood Basin from the north, as well as from percolation along the Arroyo on the south side. And of course, the quality of that water is the subject of our study, shown here in red. And what's developed is this area of brackish water. So, looking ahead, what do we expect to see? Given the prevailing groundwater movement, flow paths, this water will continue to move into the basin and be intercepted by pumping wells. So really the question is, what does the future look like? And looking ahead, there's some things that we know are going to change in the basin. First, we have the salts TMDL for the Cayugas Creek watershed. And that was going to require by year 2023 that the quality of the water in the creek be 150 milligrams per liter of chloride. So that's the first thing we know is coming ahead. The second thing we know that's coming down the road is Simi Valley is going to develop its recycled water resources and eventually its groundwater resources, which will result in less discharge to the creek from the water infiltration. So the net effect of those two things is less water in the creek. That creates an opportunity. The opportunity is that we can capture more stormwater that has better quality. And so in the long term, we expect through the salts TMDL and the decrease in water coming from Simi Valley into this area, the opportunity to put better quality stormwater in the basin. How much we'll be able to recharge from the basin is the $64,000 question. And whether there will be enough water, that's a subject for an entirely different water wise practice. So really the question for us is, what do we do with this water? What are we going to do with this situation? Of course, there's several options. One option would be to install a line of wells at the front of where this area of brackish water is and try to capture it and treat it and deliver it to users in the basin, perhaps offsetting other pumping. Another option would be to inject water at the edge, to the front leading edge of this area of brackish water and try and hold it back. A combination of the two, you can pump within the plume of brackish water, treat it with a desalter, and then inject that water back in. That way you're holding the plume back while you're cleaning it up. These three different options, what they have in common is they're very large, very expensive projects. Another option is to recognize that this water is going to move and impact additional agricultural wells over time, and look at ways to pump and treat with the existing wells in the basin. Again, recognizing that over the long term, the quality of the water that's entering the system will improve. And this is really the concept that the agricultural entities in the Las Cruces Basin wanted to investigate further. Really was what was behind our study. So just again, to kind of recap why we're looking at the pump and treating with existing wells. Again, we have the salts TMDL. The question is, why build a big expensive injection or pump and treat project when you know that the quality of the water that's entering the system is going to improve over the long term. Looking at pumping and treating with the existing wells provides a lot of flexibility in terms of allowing decisions to desalt the water to be made at the level of the water system, or perhaps in some scenarios even at the level of a ranch irrigation manager making decisions. And of course, if you're employing that type of flexibility, making those decisions at the water system or ranch level, you're creating a situation where only the folks who want better quality water are bearing those costs. So those were the attractive elements of this approach while we studied. So the purpose of the study, again, basically we were trying to address the two primary issues in the basin with respect to groundwater sustainability. Obviously, we talked about the impact of the brackish water from the Arroyo. We also wanted to look at potentially some ways to increase supply in the basin, although this was more of a secondary consideration for this particular study. Just want to point out that this study was a collaborative effort. There were a lot of different entities involved, as you can see here popping up. The study was funded jointly by the Fox Canyon GMA, the Cayugas. We did have a grant from DWR, State Health, representing DWR, and so it's very cooperative. The other names on here are the different water systems that participated in the study. So study goals and objectives. Again, we were trying to look at the existing infrastructure in the basin, primarily the wells, and existing pipeline facilities, in combination with desalters and new facilities, pump stations, and additional pipelines, to develop a system of water that could distribute the better quality water throughout the basin. So the primary objectives were to treat using impacted wells, construct desalters, and we also looked at some additional shallow wells. This is where sort of the new supply component comes in. When you desalt, you have a loss of water. The salts get concentrated into the brine stream. So we looked at shallow wells along the arroyo to make up that loss of water. And the idea behind the shallow wells is pumping close to the creek would potentially induce additional surface water percolation, providing water supply enhancement to the basin. We looked at costs to achieve 60 and 120 milligram per liter fluoride in the finished product water. We looked at just those two numbers as numbers of the range that ag might consider looking at for a desalter. 60 being sort of the highest quality water that people might be willing to pay for, versus 120 being the lowest quality water that they might tolerate at a lower cost. Study scope, pretty straightforward. We reviewed the existing information, developed the alternatives, evaluated them, and of course have a final report. Two components to the existing information that we had to look at. The first thing we had to do was map the water systems in the basin. It wasn't a comprehensive mapping of the basin water delivery infrastructure ever performed, so this was our first step, particularly for the non-potable neutral water company systems and private systems. Then we had to map the area of degraded water and develop the demand associated with that area. So the infrastructure, basically, this was the first phase of the study. We hired a consultant to go out and work with each water system owner to document their systems. We do a lot of this on paper and a lot of field work to verify locations, sizes, and capacities. This was a big effort. You can see here the different water systems, the large pink area, Zone Neutral Water Company. That's sort of the main water system in that part of the basin. We also looked at some of the smaller systems, Jeffrey Farming Company, Bell Ranch, Arroyo Las Posas Mutual down here, a large private ranch, Las Posas Orchard, Burrellwood Mutual Water Company, and then overlaid over most of the eastern part of Zone's delivery system is Ventura County Waterworks District 19. That's a system, a potable system that serves both agriculture and domestic uses in this area. And also overlaying in this area is Waterworks District 1, same situation, potable system that delivers to both ag and municipal and industrial. So obviously the waterworks systems were already documented as well as Cayugas' facilities in yellow. So most of the work that was involved at this stage was mapping out the ag and water systems. So to develop the demands for water that needs to be treated, that we evaluated, we looked at mapping under current conditions. At the time we started the study in 2012 was what we were looking at, and developed an estimate here based on 20 wells in the area impacted by water quality with chloride above 60 and 120 milligrams per liter. Again, the two end numbers that we're looking at in our study. And we found 20 wells with an associated demand of 8,600 acre feet per year. And to put that in perspective, for the eastern half of the valley, that's about half of the pumping in that part of the place. We also looked 30 years out to 2042 to see, based on what we know about the rate of movement of groundwater, where the 60 and 120 milligram per liter chloride areas might be in 30 years, and develop a similar estimate approximately 70–80% of the current pump in the basin. So over time, this plume will migrate and impact a significant majority of the groundwater use in the basin. The stakeholders decided to do all the alternative development and analysis based on the 2012. They felt that 30 years was too far out, a bit too speculative, and so we developed all alternatives based on current conditions. So what are the alternatives? We looked at 3 alternatives. I'm going to go through each one. Alternative 1, centralized treatment and blending. We also looked at centralized treatment but with blending at each water system. And then we looked at individual treatment for each water system. And we looked at 3 water systems: Zone Mutual, Earlwood, and Arroyo Las Posas. And those are the systems that are either currently impacted or are predicted to be impacted in the relatively short term. So alternative 1, centralized treatment and blending. So basically we have 3 water systems here, the distribution systems. They're served currently by wells, primarily. We have the desalter, the centralized treatment facility. Water would be pumped from the wells at each water system piped to the regional desalter. Through the treatment process, we concentrate the salts into a waste stream. Typically 15 to 20% of your feed water ends up being your waste stream. Now we get discharged to the SMP that Susan talked about. Out of the desalter, we would have 2 sources of water coming into a blending tank. One would be the very high quality treated water. We're talking about water coming out of the desalter with just a few tens of milligrams per liter total salts. And in order to blend up to the 60 or 120 milligram per liter finished water quality, we would blend in some of the raw groundwater from the raw water pipeline. And then this would get delivered back to each of the 3 water systems for their use. Alternative 2 is similar, except that the blending would happen at the individual water systems. So what does that look like? Again, here's our water systems, the wells with brackish water serving those systems, desalter, source water gets pumped to the facility, treatment facility. We have our brine going to the SMP. This time we have the blending happening back at the water systems though. So finished water with low salts gets pumped over to the water systems where it's blended there with groundwater from the wells. And in this scenario, all the water systems have reservoirs or tanks existing that can be used for this capacity. So these tanks would not be new infrastructure. And of course, the blended water gets delivered into the systems. The last alternative is basically a complete functioning treatment unit for each water system. A small plant operating in each water system. So the next step was to evaluate the alternatives, and the details are in our report. It's on our website for anybody who's interested. I'm just obviously going to go over the very high level results. And of course, the primary category of evaluation is cost. The main cost components include the RO facility. We looked at membrane treatment. For this area, we have 100 tanks of groundwater, so there would be pre-treatment to protect your membranes. Look at the typical chemicals, descalers, etc. Clean and place systems. These are all the major cost components of the facility. And we estimated the costs for these based on other studies that have been done for example, the Moorpark desalter, the Camarosa desalter. So we have numbers, pretty recent numbers, available to scale to our use. We also looked at new shallow wells. Again, the idea here is make up water for the water that's lost to the brine, to the SMP. And we made some assumptions about that. Pretty shallow wells, 250 feet deep, a couple of feet. We had fixed costs for those. Other cost items, obviously all the pipelines that are required to move all this water around and connect the systems. We assume PVC, trenchless construction for major crossings. Storage tanks and booster pumps are another major cost component. Of course, the connection to the slide that most of you have probably been waiting for, the cost for the different alternatives. Again, from left to right, going through the order that I presented them. The centralized, the fully centralized treatment and blending have the highest cost. The two different colors are for the two different water quality end members that we looked at, the 60 and the 120 milligrams per liter chloride. So you can see here, it's more expensive to treat to 60, obviously, it takes more energy, more processing, more treatment. So for 60 milligrams per liter, the centralized facility was just under $900, 120 milligrams per liter was $600. The other two alternatives came in at about the same price at both the 60 and 120 milligram per liter treatment levels. That's purely a coincidence. They got to those lower costs for different reasons. Having to do with the amount of pipeline you need, depending on which scenario we're talking about, pumping costs, etc. It's just worked out this way. So in terms of the preferred alternative, the local treatment and blending, so one treatment system for each water system was decided to be the preferred alternative. Primarily because of cost, it was one of the two lower cost options, but also because of the flexibility and the ability to phase in over time based on individual needs of different water systems. So for example, Zone has immediate need for better quality water. They can build their desalter first. Others might be able to wait longer. So building separate facilities allows you to do that. The other thing it allows you to do, which is on the slide here, is it allows those different water systems and users to tailor their water quality to their needs. So different crops, different blending, different strategies, all sorts of different opportunities to maximize the flexibility by having different desalters. Cost I already mentioned. And it also happens to be the lowest initial cost in terms of just doing the first facility, which potentially could be zoned. So in conclusion, pretty straightforward. It's feasible to use desalters. We knew that going in. The technology is proven, available. We knew we could treat the chloride impacted wells, provide blended water to folks who need it for salt sensitive crops. That was all known going in. We also knew that cost would depend on the water quality goal. That was not a secret. What was a surprise, though, was the fact that multiple desalters turned out to be the most cost-effective and preferred option. Going into this, many of us thought one large centralized facility would end up having the best cost, the lowest cost, but it didn't. And really that has to do with the fact that there's a lot of pipelines needed to move the source water to a centralized facility and then pump it back to the different water systems. And so when you did all the costs and come all out, it shook out that separate treatment facilities actually was cheaper. So it's probably the biggest takeaway from this study. All right, so what's next? Looking ahead, each water system owner is going to do its own planning based on its needs. Zone's looking at potential desalters. Carol will talk about that a little bit more. Bell Ranch is also collecting hydrogen study and doing their planning for potential desalter that would be down near sort of the boundary between the East Las Cruces Basin and the Pleasant Valley Basin. Potentially others. So we'll continue monitoring our groundwater quality and levels and communicate those results so that these water system owners can do their planning, so they can understand the rates of movement and change in the quality of groundwater in the basin. We get data from well owners. IGUS has a monitoring program, as does the county. And we'll continue our planning efforts with the Las Cruces Groundwater Users Group and the GMA in a collaborative fashion to address these issues. With that, we adjourn.
I'll start off with a incorporated in that area to serve domestic water to the land that developed along the arroyo. The major shareholder in the development was the Burlwood Investment Company, and that was owned by the Barn family. They owned a vast tracts of land, about 7,500 acres in the Las Posas Valley. And in 1919, this group hired an engineer to come in and study the feasibility of developing an irrigation system in the Las Posas Valley. Test wells were drilled along the arroyo, and the results of those justified the considerable expense it would take to develop the irrigation system. 2 years later, the stockholders of the Las Posas Water Company approved the formation of 2 mutual water companies. There was Zone 1 that was going to serve 2,800 acres, and then a Zone 2 to serve another 1,200 acres at a higher elevation. They were worried that one company would bear the cost of pumping water up for another company, so they developed 2 companies. All 3 of these companies, the domestic and the 2 ag companies, shared many of the same shareholders. By 1924, the zone systems were completed with wells along the arroyo. That consisted of a main pumping plant, and that's located at Los Angeles Avenue, pretty close to Sand Canyon Road. It was a 36-inch main line that carried water from this main pumping plant miles away to a reservoir north of LA Avenue between Donlin and Bradley. The water from that reservoir is then distributed west as far as that dividing line between the old Rancho Las Posas and Rancho Del Norte, which is kind of out toward Center School Road, kind of up on the diagonal. So the 2 zone companies merged in 1948 to become Zone Mutual Water Company. The Las Posas Water Company, that domestic company, is now Ventura County Waterworks District 19. And Burlwood Heights Mutual Water Company, the neighbor just east of Zone, was formed in the 1930s by some of the same shareholders. And that's how Zone started, and that's why the facilities that are along the arroyo feed much of the Las Posas Valley. So this is our zone system. This is the area that I was speaking of where the main plant is. That is also the area that Brian was showing you with the map of the chlorides with the bullseye of the bright fuchsia color. So we take that, the water comes up and moves over, and the reservoir is here, and this is the gravity-fed system that takes and feeds all the way over to this line. The water also is pushed, and this is that upper, that was originally zone number 2, because it needs to be lifted. There's a pumping pushing plant here and another one here that kind of takes, moves it up in this area. So zone now has 10 wells that are operational. 5 of them are in this area, and 5 of them are along Bradley Road. Along this area in the West Las Posas. And that dividing line that Brian was describing kind of runs kind of straight up through here. So the West Las Posas and then the East Las Posas. We still use that same backbone structure that was set in place in 1924. The pumping plant pushes from those arroyo wells up to a tower right here that raises the level high enough to push the water from that point all the way to the reservoir. There are the 5 wells in the West Las Posas that also feed that same reservoir. It is the properties on the east side of our system that get all their water from the arroyo wells. And these are the wells that are impacted by the high chlorides. Chlorides at 200 milligrams per liter, TDS about 1,700. In an average year, and this hasn't been average for the last couple of years, but in an average year, zone plans to pump and deliver about 5,000 acre-feet. Half of that is produced in the east from those wells, and the other half from the west wells. In the last 8 years or so, we've been purchasing some blending water from Cayugas to help reduce the salinity to those farmers that we are serving on the east side of our system. Well, salinity and irrigation water is not good. It reduces fruit size, it impacts overall production, burns leaves, and it's devastating for some crops. It's hard on lemons and it's way worse on avocados. Exactly how each orchard farmer handles the salinity is an individual management choice. It requires more irrigation to push the salts beyond the root zones. It requires different fertilization techniques. And certainly all orchards count on good rainy season to change the soils. Berries don't tolerate salts. And the row crops along the arroyo, row crops are bedded up and irrigated such that the water carries the salts past the root zones. So salinity in irrigation water is a problem for zone's shareholders. And the solution for us may be in desalting the water that we're pumping from the main well that we have in the east right along at our main pumping plant, and then blending that with other wells. So we're looking to desalt. And in order to desalt at our main plant location, we need access to the salinity management pipeline. It's scheduled to reach us about 2017. A while ago that date seemed so far in the future. But now it's going to be upon us, and it's time to get going here. Early in 2013, Zone asked a company, SPI, out of Carlsbad, to give us an estimate of the cost of desalting that main production well. We had asked for an overview, just to get some cost estimates. It came with a lot of contingencies, but the estimate for the plant was $5.5 million for a treatment system. That would produce about 1,500 gallons of water with fluorides in the 60 to 90 range. The estimated production costs for amortized and O&M from that study showed to be about $426 an acre foot. At this point in time, when it was presented to our board, it caused a whole lot of whistles and head shaking, and that was kind of that. Next step, we participated in this conjunctive use study, and the findings were the same, pretty much in that ballpark for the cost for producing the blended water with lower fluorides. So now in 2015, we're at it again. But this time we're using a consultant, Water Infrastructure and Management Solutions, it's Mr. Era, and we've asked him to get down into the details. We've done some extensive testing on water samples, and we have done this, with this results, asked Mr. Era to shop for the filter equipment and the treatment options. We've looked at a number of vendors, and we have one vendor that is convinced that we don't need pre-treatment. And we know that's very expensive. We're producing ag water, of course it's not potable water, but at the same time, we need to be very sure that if we're going along those lines that he's correct, and we really don't need pre-treatment. So we've got a pilot study that's set to be installed in about 2 weeks. And we'll run that to see actually what's going to happen, whether we're going to get the filters followed or not. We're lucky, we've identified a location for a desalter, and it's going to be pretty much right next to the S&P pipeline. It runs right by us, so we don't have a lot of plumbing to put in to get connected. It seems to make good sense to clean up the water from the wells that we have historically pumped since the 1920s. There's also the possibility of putting in a shallow well field in the future. But right now, we're concentrating on what would it cost and what would it take to clean up one of our main producing wells. Right now, the zone board of directors needs some firm numbers to see if it's feasible for the company to take on desalting on its own. It's a business decision. there are such a variety of responses from even the different members of our board. Some think that, we've got to have water where the fluorides are 60 or less. There are others that think that it's going to be too costly, and maybe they can live with something higher than that, but that all still needs to be determined. So we're moving forward with the idea, and we certainly understand the importance of making use of the brackish water as a resource for our whole system. So,
Okay, thank you very much. And hopefully you guys can stay a little bit later afterwards for answering some questions. Not a bad job for a couple of women up here doing things. So you see that guy standing back toward that camera? There's a reason for that. That's Bob Allen, and Bob is recording the program today that you saw for KAPY, local Oxnard broadcasting station. And you can review what happened today, good, bad, or indifferent, very good. How's that going to work? On our website, your website? Tell us how that works.
It's kdtv.com or your website. It'll be on. We'll give Kelly the embed code so everybody can watch it there.
We're not paying you anything. So,
Wait a second. I have the same persuasion, so I had breakfast this morning. Thank you very much.
did you get a free breakfast?
Yes.
Okay, Bob, I will pay you to edit out the men's restroom comment.
So thank you all. We have some party gifts here for our speakers. I see that they're, Susan, it looks like that one's yours. So this is the reason why they have names on them.
We got chocolate.
You got chocolate, and you get chocolate. So thank you. Next month, we're going to have our meeting in Oxnard again, and we're going to do GSA stuff. So we're going to have speaker, what? Forget that, they will show up. So we're going to have a really good speaker, whoever that shall be, talk about the Groundwater Sustainability Act and explain it to everybody so you get a good, clear understanding of what's going on, and ask any questions that you might have. These guys are going to hang around for a little bit afterwards if you have any questions of them on how the presentation today works and everything like that. Any other announcements from anybody? So that's it. So thank you all very much. We will see you hopefully sooner than later.